San Francisco, one of the most earthquake-prone cities on the planet. But right now, in the middle of that city, there is a 58-story skyscraper leaning 28 inches to one side, still sinking, still occupied, still in the same earthquake zone it has always been in. The city spent $100 million trying to fix it. The lean came down by 2 inches, and the building is still moving. Nobody in an official position wants to answer that directly. We will come back to why. But first, let's go back to where this story actually starts. Because the problem did not begin when residents noticed cracks in their floors. It did not begin when the measurements went public in 2016. The decision that started everything. This is Millennium Tower. 58 stories, 419 luxury condos, located at 301 Mission Street, right in the heart of San Francisco's financial district. When it opened in 2009, it was a statement. Units sold for millions. Residents thought they were buying into something permanent, something that would hold its value, hold its position, hold its ground. But here's the thing about San Francisco. The ground itself is the problem. The financial district is not built on bedrock. It is built on fill, bay mud, and soft clay, material that was dumped into the bay over decades as developers pushed the shoreline outward. That soil compresses under weight. It shifts when water levels change. In a serious earthquake, it liquefies. And this is not obscure geology. Every engineer working in this city knows it. It is the first thing you deal with before construction on any major building even starts. The question every tower in San Francisco has to answer before a single pile goes in the ground is this: how are you going to stay still? Here is how the responsible answer works. You drill down through all the unstable layers, through the fill at the surface, through the bay mud below it, through the old clay beneath that, until you hit bedrock. Solid, unmoving rock that does not compress and does not shift. Sometimes that means drilling 200 feet down, sometimes more. It is slow and it is expensive. But bedrock is the only guarantee you have when you are building something that weighs 130 million pounds on ground that used to be underwater. Millennium Partners, the developer behind this building, went a different direction. Instead of bedrock, they used what are called friction piles, concrete shafts driven about 80 feet down into a dense layer of sand. Not bedrock, sand. The idea was that friction between the piles and the surrounding soil would hold the building in place. Engineers ran the calculations, signed off on the design, and projected the building would settle about 6 inches over time. Normal, they said, within acceptable parameters. The city reviewed the plans, inspectors approved them, and in 2005, construction began on a $750 million skyscraper anchored to sand, in a flood zone, in earthquake country, above two of the most dangerous fault lines in the United States. 6 inches of settling was what the experts projected. Keep that number in mind. The building that looked perfect. When the Millennium Tower opened, nobody was talking about the foundation. Why would they? The building was standing. It was finished. It looked extraordinary. Units ranged from $2 million on the low end to over $10 million for the top floor penthouses. Tech executives bought here. Former 49ers quarterback Joe Montana bought here. Former Secretary of State Warren Christopher's family owned property here. These were not buyers making uninformed decisions. These were people with every option available to them in one of the most expensive real estate markets in the country. They chose this building specifically, and it delivered everything it promised on the surface. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the Bay Bridge, a 75-foot heated saltwater pool, a spa, a private theater, rooftop terraces where residents threw 4th of July parties and watched fireworks over the bay, concierge service, chef's kitchens, private elevators. The address in San Francisco. What it did not deliver was a stable foundation, because underneath all of it, the building was already sinking. The movement had started the moment the full weight of the structure settled onto those 80-foot friction piles, slowly, silently, years before anyone started measuring publicly. And it was not going to stop on its own. The cracks. It started with small things, easy to explain away individually. A front door in one unit dragged slightly against its frame. Maintenance adjusted the hinges. A hairline crack appeared in the lobby floor. Concrete cracks during curing, residents were told. Normal. A window frame in an upper unit sat slightly wrong in its housing. Not dramatically, just off, somehow. But then residents started comparing notes. And that is when the pattern became impossible to dismiss. The cracks were not in one unit. They were across multiple floors. Tiles in bathrooms had shifted. Gaps had opened where walls met floors. Elevator doors were hesitating and misaligning with landings. And the floors themselves had a slope, not enough to alarm a first-time visitor, but enough that residents who lived there every day could feel it. Some of them described placing a marble on the floor and watching it roll without being pushed, in a luxury apartment that had cost them millions of dollars. At the same time, construction began on the Transbay Transit Center directly next door. Workers had to dig roughly 5 stories down into the earth and continuously pump groundwater out of the soil to keep the site dry. Here is why that matters. When you pull that volume of water out of fill and clay, the soil compacts. The particles move closer together. The ground sinks. And the Millennium Tower, sitting directly adjacent to that excavation, started sinking faster than it already was. By 2016, the measurements ended any remaining debate. The building had sunk 16 inches into the ground, not 6, 16. And because the sinking was uneven across the footprint, the northwest corner had dropped further than the rest, producing a tilt of 14 inches at the very top of the building. To put that in perspective, the Leaning Tower of Pisa took centuries to reach its famous lean. The Millennium Tower moved 14 inches in 7 years, and it was still moving. The blame game. What followed was years of litigation that produced confidential settlements, enormous legal fees, and zero real accountability. Residents sued Millennium Partners. You chose friction piles over bedrock to cut costs on a $750 million development. You sold these units as premium long-term investments. You did not disclose the foundation compromise. This is on you. Millennium Partners pointed at the city and the Transbay Joint Powers Authority. We submitted plans. The city reviewed them. Engineers certified them. Inspectors approved them at every stage. And the groundwater pumping from the transit center excavation destabilized conditions the original design was never asked to handle. The Transbay team came back with data showing the tower was already sinking measurably before their excavation started. The foundation was the problem from day one. The city pointed at the structural engineering firm. They ran the calculations. They certified the design. We relied on their judgment. Everyone pointed at everyone else. Settlements were reached. Terms were not disclosed. And at the end of all of it, not one developer, not one engineer, not one city official faced any meaningful consequence for approving a friction pile foundation for a 130 million pound skyscraper on bay mud above 2 active fault lines. The people who made the decision walked away. The residents who trusted the process are still living with it. The fix. By 2020, something had to be done. The plan was called a pile upgrade retrofit. Engineers would drill 52 new concrete piles approximately 250 feet deep, all the way down to bedrock, and connect them to the existing foundation. Transfer the building's weight off the original friction piles and onto new deep anchors in solid rock. In other words, give the building the foundation it should have had in 2005, just from underneath, after the fact, with 400 families still living inside. Standard pile driving was ruled out immediately because the vibrations could cause additional damage to a building already under stress. Instead, engineers used slow rotary drilling. Every pile had to be placed with surgical precision inside an occupied structure, with sensors monitoring every millimeter of movement throughout the process. One misaligned pile and the load transfer fails. You make the problem worse. And here is what actually happened during construction. When the first set of piles went in, the building moved in the wrong direction. The northwest corner, already the lowest point of the structure, sank an additional 2 inches while the fix was in progress. The repair was actively worsening the lean. Work stopped. The design was revised. The scope was cut. Instead of 52 piles, only 18 were completed on one side before the project was scaled back. Final cost, over $100 million. Result, the lean reduced from approximately 30 inches to approximately 28 inches. That is it. $100 million. 2 inches. The building is still settling at roughly 1/10 of an inch per year. The tilt is not reversible with the current installation. The full plan was never completed. Did they fix it, or did they just buy time? You already know the answer. Where things stand now. Sensors track the building's movement down to the millimeter. Engineers review the data monthly. The city receives regular reports. Officials say the structure meets current seismic standards and is safe. These are the same officials whose predecessors reviewed and approved friction piles for this building in the first place. Take that reassurance for exactly what it is worth. For residents, the financial damage is permanent. Property values dropped 40 to 50% across many units. A top-floor unit bought for $13 million in 2016 sold in 2025 for $9 million. A $4 million loss on a single apartment. Some owners owe more on their mortgages than their units are currently worth. They cannot sell without a devastating loss. They cannot stay without watching the investment decline further. And the HO has restricted opening certain windows due to structural stress from the lien. Residents paid millions for floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. They are not allowed to open them. The building is still there, still leaning 28 inches, still in the flood zone, still on the fault lines, and the earthquake has not happened yet. The same engineers who say the building is safe are the ones who said 6 inches of settling was fine. When the big one hits, and seismologists say it will, a 28-inch lean on a friction pile foundation in a liquefaction zone is going to answer a lot of questions that officials have been carefully avoiding for years. $750 million to build it, $100 million to partially fix it, 2 inches of correction. A building still leaning, still sinking, still waiting. The decision that caused all of this was approved at every level. The people who made it faced no consequences. The people who bought in good faith are still paying for it. And the earthquake has not happened yet. Subscribe for more.